welcome to Education Program Online with me, Teacher Christine, taking you in Mathematics for Senior 3 and Senior 4. So dear learners, our topic still remains Algebra, and we are still looking at the methods of solving the quadratic equations. Remember that under these methods of solving quadratic equations, we have so far looked at 3, and then the fourth one, we did not complete it. So that was a general formula. So under general formula, that was number 4. So I want us to look at it to remind ourselves on how to use general formula in solving a quadratic equations. For example, they say solve x minus x plus 6 equals to x squared using general formula. Using general formula. So dear learners, in a certain whatever time, you may be given a question of this nature. And remember that yesterday or the previous lesson, we are looking at how to derive the general formula. And after deriving the general formula, you can be asked to use the formula in solving the quadratic equations, of which we say that if you are to use general formula, it means you can leave other methods of solving quadratic equations and then you use general formula. If you have been instructed to use, then you cannot use any other method apart from general formula. So our solution, we said, before we come to our solution, look at the statement here. The statement is not perfect. It's not well arranged. It says negative x plus 6 equals to x squared. So this is not a quadratic, though it possesses the element of a quadratic equation, but it is expression does not tell us it is equation, because it is ending with a variable which is unknown, and yet we said all quadratic equations or equations end with a 0. So what we do, we rearrange this, and we know that our quadratic equation begins with the first, the second degree. So you will have x squared, and then this x, all this is left hand side will cross the equal signs and goes to the right hand side. So when negative x crosses here, it becomes a positive x. So it will become x, positive x. And then positive 6, when it crosses equal signs, it becomes a negative 6. And then now this one becomes a complete expression of a quadratic equation. Now from this level, this is where we are going to apply the formula. And we said before we apply the formula, we must identify what is the value of A, which is the first term, what is the value of B, which is the second term, and then C, which is the third term. So coming back to our equation here, we find that the first term is 1 because the coefficient is 1. So we said A equals to 1, and then B is positive 1, and then C is negative 6. Now after you have identified the values of your letters, then you can now be able to state the formula. So our formula, yesterday we said it is x equals to minus b plus or minus a root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Since now we have known the values of these letters on the formula, we can now easily substitute them. So we come and say b is positive 1, so we shall maintain our negative 1 here, plus minus a root of positive 1 square minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 6. All out of what? Out of 2 times 1. So at this level, we can now simplify. So we shall have negative 1 plus or minus a root of 1 square, we get 1, and then minus 4 times 1 times negative 6. So we shall have in that form negative 6 all divided by 2. Then now from here we are going now to simplify this, what is inside the bracket, which will be 1 plus or minus a root of, so dear learners, here we have positive 1, so we say this is our positive 1, and then we have negative 4 times 1 gives us negative 4, and then negative 4 times negative 6 gives us a positive 24. So we shall have positive 24. Divide it by what? By 2. Then now you'll simplify that. So we find that and inside the root or under the root we have 1 plus 24, which will give us 25. So we shall have x equals to negative 1 plus or minus a root of 25 out of what? Out of 2. So the root of 25 is the same as what? Is the same as 5. And then now we shall have x equals to negative 1 plus or minus minus what? Minus 5 out of what? Out of 2. Now at that level you can now break these roots. So we shall have either x equals to negative 1 plus 5 all out of 2, which will give us negative 1 plus 5 will get 4 out of 2, which is equals to 2. So you say therefore x equals to 2, or you will now take a negative and this root here negative, so which will be, or x will be equals to negative 1 negative 5 all divide it by 2, which will give us negative 6. So negative 6 divided by 2 gives us what? Gives us negative 3. So dear learners, this is how you simply use the general formula. Then you come and say therefore my final answer x equals to 3 equals to 2, or x equals to negative 3. X equals to 2 or x equals to negative 3. So dear learners, that is how you simply use the general formula. So I wanted you to see the difference here, that in case I get it when it is not a well expressed quadratic equation, what are you supposed to do? Reorganize that equation so that it appears, it gives us a good expression of a quadratic equation. And then 2, take note of this. In case I find the third term is a negative, what will happen to my substitution here? So your substitution, a negative and a negative will turn to a positive. Then you will arrive to this level, you add. So the other previous lesson we were looking at the third term being a positive, but this time we are looking at the third term being a negative. So dear learners, that is for method 4, which is general formula. So now we are going to look at the last method, that is method 5. So method 5, that is solving quadratic equations using a graph. Quadratic equations using a graph. using a graph. So this is the last method of solving a quadratic equation, that is by a graph. So my dear learners, when you are asked to solve equation using a graph, you have to be very careful, and you must follow the following step. One of the steps, you have to look at the expression of the equation, because if you are to use a graph, then they will give you the inequalities signs, where it starts and where it stops. It's very important for you to take a note. And then step number 2, if the equation is not factorized, then you are to factorize. And then step number 3, you are to form what we call the table of values. And then after getting the table of values, then you can now apply the real method, which is the graph. So let us look at our example 1. So example here says, draw a graph, draw a graph of y equals to x square plus 6x plus 8 comma 4 negative 6 is less or equals to x, which is less or equals to 1. And then the question comes, says, find we go to the question, the body of the question, which says find and use the graph to solve a x square plus 6x. You have x square plus 6x plus 8 equals to 0. And then b, it says x plus 2 times x plus 4 times x plus 4 equals to positive 3. And then lastly, c, we have x plus 2 and then times x plus 4 equals to negative 2. Dear learners, that is the question. The question here, our question here is a quadratic. And then now they are asking us to solve these sub-equations using a what? Using a graph. So what you do, you come back to here, to inequality here. It is here that it helps you, that if I'm to draw my table, I had to base that x must flow from negative 6 to positive 1. And then after that is what we say in functions as objects or output. So the input is negative 6 to what? To positive 1. and then now you will be able to use the input to get the output of these equations. Then now your solution, you will first look at your equation here. First step, you factorize the equation, because sometimes they may not give you when it is factorized. So you factorize x square plus 6x and then plus 8 equals to 0. So for this case, we can easily use what we call the error and trial method. You break the first term and then you break the third term. So when we break here, it means you look at the numbers that you multiply to get the multiple, which is x square. And then here we have 2 and what? And positive 4. So which will automatically give us x plus 2 and then x plus 4. Dear learners, look here. Even if they have given you, for example, when you look at part B, it is the same factors. The examiner needs you to factorize. You have to break this first to prove that, or to show the examiner that you know what you are going to do. That is, don't say that since it is already factorized here, I'm not going to do anything. So it will make your work not up to date. Now up to that level, then you do what? You come and do what? Find the table of values. Find or draw the table of values. Draw the table of value is your step 2. Draw the table of values. Table of values. And your table of values will have x and y. So we shall have x and y. So our table of values will appear in this nature, learners. On the first row, we shall have x. And then on the second row, we shall be having these factors. The first factor is x plus what? Plus 2. And then the third row, we shall have x plus 4. X plus 4. And then the fourth row will now give us y, which is x plus 2, close the bracket, x plus 4. So that will be our fourth row. So now from here, where do you get the values of x? The values of x are given from the equalities here. We have negative 6 up to where? Positive 1. So you shall have negative 6 here, and then you cross. Then you have negative 5. Negative 5. And then we have negative 4. And then we have negative 3. And then we have negative 2. We have negative 1. And then we have 0. And then we have positive 1. So learners, that is how you can form your input of x. You draw from where the inequalities are. And now after getting that, then you can now come to this part. Now if x is negative 6, what will be the answer here? Then you will use your rough paper. X equals to negative 6. So x plus 2, what will it be? So it will be negative 6 plus 2, which will give us negative 4. So learners, that is how you will do what? You will work out to get the solutions for these other blacker squares. So here we shall get negative 4. And then here, if x is negative 5, meaning you are going to place, where there is x, you place negative 5, which will give us negative 3. So we shall get it here as negative 3. And then here we have, if x is negative 4, what will happen here? We will get negative 2. I hope class you are following me. For us to get the values, you substitute x from this equation here. You substitute x with the values which are given. Then now, if x is post negative 3, if we place negative 3 here, we get negative 3 plus 1 plus 2 will give us negative 1. And then here, when we place x negative 2 here plus 2, we get 0. We get 0. And then when we come to negative 1, when we place here, we get positive 2. And then when we place here 0, we get we place negative 2, we get here positive 1. Here we get positive 1, and then here we get positive 2. And then when we put positive 1 here, it gives us positive 3. So, dear learners, that is how you get it for x plus 2. Then now x plus 4, you also do the same. When x is negative 6, you place x 6 here. It will give us what? Positive negative 2. And then when x is negative 5, we place here negative 5 plus 4. It will give us negative 1. Negative 1. And then if x is negative 4, what will happen? It will automatically be negative 4 plus negative positive 4 will give us 0. And then we have when x is negative 3, when we place negative 3 here, we get negative 3 plus 4, we get positive 1. And then negative 2 plus positive 4, we get positive 2. And then negative 1 plus 4, we get positive 3. And then we have negative positive 0 plus 4, we get positive 4. And then 1 plus 4, we get 5. So, dear learners, that is how you simply get the values of these two. Now, the last part is the value of y. How do we get the value of y? You can also go ahead by substituting this, working on your rough paper. But to save time in your examination, you simply know that this is x plus 2 times x plus 4. Which means this is for x2 and this is for x plus 4. You simply leave x and then you deal with this. You say, when I multiply 4 times 2, I will get positive 8. That is the shortest way you can get. And then you also come here, negative 3 times negative 1, you will get positive 3. And then negative 2 times 0, we get 0. And then negative 1 times positive 1, we get negative 1. We get negative 1. And then 0 times 2, we get 0. 1 times 3, we get 3. And then 4 times 2, we get 8. And then 3 times 5, we get 15. So, learners, that is how we can get the what? The values of y. After you have got the values of y, the next step before you draw your table. Now there, at least you can now see that you are now able to sketch what we call a graph. So the next step, you will simply now say, what am I going to plot? Because when you are dealing with the graphs, you are dealing with the plotting. So you are going to plot x against what? Y. Y against x. That is, you put here points to plot. Points to plot. So the points that you are going to plot is x and what? And y. That is what we are going to plot. So you are going to check from your table what is x. X is negative 6. So we shall have point to plot is negative 6, comma, and then y is what? Is 8. Close the bracket. Then you also come here. We have negative 5 and what? Positive 3. Negative 5 and positive 3. And then we have negative 4 and positive negative 4 and 0. Negative 4 and 0. And then we have negative 3 and what? Negative 1. Negative 3 and negative 1. And then we have negative 2 and 0. Negative 2 and 0. And then we have negative 1 and negative 1 and positive 3. Then we have 0 and 8. 0 and 8. And then lastly we have 1 and 15. 1 and 15. So dear learners, these are the points that you are going to plot. After you have identified the points, then it becomes very easy now for you to do what? To plot your, to draw your graph. Yes, learners, from these points, after you have drawn your table of values, identify the coordinates or the points that you are to plot, which we are already identified as being stated on the chalkboard here. So now looking at our graph here, we are going to plot these points. So when we are plotting, remember that we should be having the y-axis and the x-axis. So our first point there is negative 6 and positive 8. So when you look at our graph here, you find that in each graph, small square here, it is it has a square unit of 1, of 2, 1. So 1 square unit is equals to 1 small square. So if we are to plot our points negative 8, negative 6 and positive 8, so we look at negative 6 on our x-axis. From 0 here we have negative 6 is here, and then you follow on this line straight up to where positive 8 on the y-axis, which is here. So positive 8 you plot here, and then you move to the second point, which is negative 5 and positive 3. So you also stand here and come on the x-axis to negative 5, which is here. This is negative 4, this is negative 5. So at negative 5 here, you follow this straight line of 5 up to where you get positive 3 on the y-axis, which is here. Then you plot it. Then the third point is negative 0 and positive 0. So we shall have negative 4, we come up to here, and then 0 on the y-axis. So we plot exactly on the line here. And then we shall have the next one, which is negative 3 and negative 1. So negative 3, when we move from negative 2, we have negative 1 here. So negative 1, then you move downwards on the y-axis, so to negative 1, which is here. So we plot it there. And then we have negative 2 and 0. Negative 2 and 0, it means it is here. Negative 2 is here, and 0 on the y-axis will still be on the same line of x. Then we have the next one, which is negative 1 and positive 3. So negative 1, from 0 here we have this as negative 1, then we follow it upward to the y-axis where positive 3 is. We mark it there. And then we have 0 and 8. 0 and 8. 0 on the x-axis, and then 8 on the y-axis. We follow the line of y direct up to where positive 8 is. Then you mark, you plot it there. And then lastly, we have positive 1 on the x-axis and then positive 15 on the y-axis. So you move from 0 up to 1 here, and then you follow it upward on the y-axis until you meet 15. So here we have 14 and then we have 15. You plot it here. Dear learners, after plotting like that, use your free hand to join the points. Don't use a ruler. So you join our points from the start here. We join like this up to 15 here, and then we produce what we call a parabolic curve. So these are what we call a parabolic curve. They look like a U. And then after getting your tab, whatever, your graph, plotting your graph, you now come to your questions. Our question was that use your graph to do what? To determine, use the graph to find the values of x square. Part A, it was x square plus 6x, and then plus 8 equals to 0. So if you are to use your graph here, it means that the y is equals to what? Y is equals to 0, because these are two sides. We have the left hand side and then we have the right hand side. The right hand side. So our right hand side will be for y, and then because x is here containing what? On the left hand side we have x, so on the right hand side we have y. So meaning that our y here is what? Is equals to 0. So the value of what is given here is the value of y. Now if y is 0, what about what will be the x? What will be x is what we are finding. So what you do, you come to your graph here, draw the line on where the 0 is. So you draw your line of y here across where 0 is. Then because that is where 0 is marked, then now you say y equals to 0. And then now after drawing this line, you take your reading. Your reading will be taken only if lines where it touches. So you find where the point is marked here and then here. So you find these two lines are corresponding to one another. So you will take your reading from here. If y is 0, x will be what? X will be negative 4, and x will be negative 2. That is y equals to 0, x equals to negative 4, or x equals to negative 2. That is your part A. And then part B, our part B was x plus 2 and then x plus 4 equals to 3. So meaning that our y equals to what? Equals to 3. Now you draw where 3 is. Locate where 3 digit 3 positive 3 is on your graph here. That is on the y-axis. So you find that positive 3 is just here. And then now you get your ruler, you draw a line across that number. Then you say this is x equals to 3. So from here is where you are going to take your reading. So you stand where it is marked. Are you seeing it is marked here and also here? So you take your reading, you come down, you stand on this point, come down up to the x-axis, you find it is negative 5. So you say when x is equals to 3, when y equals to 3, x equals to negative 5. And then you move to the next point also. You find where the line crosses. The line crosses this point. So you move also downward and you take your reading. So you move downwards up to x-axis, and then you'll find that it will be at negative 1 exactly. Then you say, therefore my answer when y equals to 3, x equals to negative 5, or x equals to negative 1. And that is for part what? Part B. And then we have part C. Part C was x plus 2 and then times x plus 4 equals to negative 2. Equals to negative 2. So dear learners, what a equation equates to is the value of y. Our value here is y is negative 2. So you come to your graph and locate where is that negative 2 on the y-axis. So you find that on the y-axis, we have negative 2 at this point. Then you draw a line across that point. And then now you will have negative what? Y equals to negative 2. So when y equals to negative 2, if we are to take, is there any point which is marked on this straight line? It is not there. So if it is not there, then we simply say the x plus 2 times x plus 4 equals to negative 2. The line does not touch the graph. It doesn't touch the graph. So there is no way you can take your reading. So the answer is no. The solution is 0. So meaning that there is no solution for that. You only take your reading where the graph touches. Our dear learners, with this, I hope you have followed it and you have understood. You have picked something on how to use the graph in solving the quadratic equation. Lastly, I summarize by saying, when you are using a graph, first of all, you identify the equality so that you are able to draw a table of values. After a table of values, identify the value of x and y, and then you draw. Solving it, you look at it, what the question depends what the question have given you. What equals after equal sign is the value of y, and then you draw it on your graph. Point it, where do I find that on y-axis? And then you make a straight line. If it touches a graph, you then take your reading from the points which are being plotted or marked, and then you will be able to get your answer. With these learners, we have come to the end of our lesson, and I hope I will give you the exercise after, maybe in the next lesson. I wish you the best and goodbye.